Lesson 2 for July 6 through to 12, Blueprint for a Better World, read by Dr. Percy Harold. Tuesday, July 9, Slaves, Widows, Fatherless, Foreigners. Question, read Exodus chapter 23 and verse 9. What is God's message to Israel here? Exodus 23 verse 9, Also you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. As newly freed slaves, the Israelites knew what it was to be oppressed, exploited, and marginalized. And while they celebrated their freedom, God was concerned that they not forget where they had come from, what it was like to be excluded, and what he had done to rescue them. He instituted the Passover as a memorial event and an opportunity to retell the story. As we read in Exodus 13 verse 14, With a mighty hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Question, read Exodus chapter 22 verses 21 to 23. How important was the memory of their own slavery in the instructions about how the people should treat the least fortunate in their new society? Exodus 22, beginning at verse 21. You shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you afflict them in any way, and they cry at all to me, I will surely hear their cry. Barely had the echoes died away after the giving of the Ten Commandments when Moses is called to spend more time with God, who gives him detailed instructions as to how these grand commands shall be lived out in Israelite society. Even before the instructions for building the tabernacle, God gives 3 chapters of laws about such things as the appropriate treatment of slaves, laws that would have stood out in stark contrast to the treatment many of the Israelites had experienced. There were laws dealing with violent crimes, laws related to property, laws for everyday living, and principles for establishing courts to implement these laws and to administer justice. See Exodus chapter 21 to 23. Now those 3 chapters contain 98 verses. So what I think we'll do just for this lesson today is we'll look at the highlights. The first 11 verses of chapter 21 of Exodus 21 deal with the law concerning servants. And then the next 15 or so deal with the law concerning violence. And then the next 7 or 8 deal with animal control laws. If a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox falls, or a donkey falls in it, the owner of the pit shall make it good. And there are other ones in there as well. And then in chapter 22, the first 14 verses deal with the responsibility for property. It deals with neighbours passing through and trespass, and about cattle in there as well. And then from verse 16 to 31 of the second chapter, it deals with moral and ceremonial principles. And then in chapter 23, the first 9 verses deal with justice for all. And then the verses 10 to 13 deals with the law of Sabbaths. And then verses 14 to 18 deals with 3 annual feasts. And verse 20 to the end of the chapter deals with the angel and the promises. Verse 25 reads, So you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of you. No one shall suffer miscarriage or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my fear before you. I will cause confusion among all the people to whom you come, and will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. Prominent among these laws was concern for fellow citizens in this new society, as well as concern for the outsiders and those most vulnerable. These people were not to be exploited. They were even given rights to access food in ways that would respect their dignity, such as gleaning leftover crops from the harvested fields. Such treatment for outsiders and foreigners was not common in the ancient world. Even today, some seem to forget the important moral principles found here regarding the treatment of others. And so to finish the day, what memory in your experience makes you more compassionate and concerned about the suffering or injustice of others? You have been listening to a reading of the Adult Sabbath School Bible Study Guide by Dr. Percy Harold from Queensland, Australia. This service is brought to you by Hope Channel, the Sabbath School Department, and Christian Services for the Blind. Remember, God is always faithful.